Lest in the wake of the excitement for Warhammer 40k, we've forgotten about Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. No, in fact, Owlcat had a stream the other day, highlighting all the new things that will be coming with the new DLC. And my purpose here is not to list off the many things that were talked about with respect to gameplay, with respect to the DLC. However, that said, the DLC itself looks absolutely gorgeous, fascinating. I was very reluctant to initially play it, but now with the second part, I think I'm definitely going to give it a go and play from the beginning to the end. Greater details for many of the archetypes were revealed as well, which solidified my choice of the Tandem Executioner. The Tandem Executioner Hunter archetype is going to be the ultimate pet build in the game because it simply optimizes your pet and gives your pet lots and lots of options. But like I said, I'm not really here to talk about the details of the archetypes or the DLC. Definitely check out their stream if you can. It's well worth it. It's filled with a lot of information and I will link it below. But what I want to talk about is the seeming contrast between Pathfinder as a franchise and an IP, and Warhammer 40k. It's kind of interesting as it's dawned upon me that there is a slight division there, and I belong in the camp of vastly preferring Pathfinder, mostly because of my D&D background, as well as having gotten involved in Pathfinder to a lesser degree over the years, and I'm thoroughly a fantasy type of guy, but that seems to be a minority camp. One of the big reveals I found during the stream was that although they're technically done with Pathfinder for now, that is after the final DLC is released, which is not this one, but another one that's going to somewhat resemble the Citadel DLC for Mass Effect 3, a lot of emphasis on companions, a lot of emphasis on the relationships between the various companions, that sort of thing, then it will be over. However, one of the developers did say that they're not completely opposed to the idea of going forward, doing something in the Pathfinder universe. Of course, they would have to get the license for it, and I know for a fact that Owlcat is on very good terms with Paizo to this day, so I don't really see that as an obstacle. However, what's clearly next on the agenda is Rogue Trader 40k. Now, from a business perspective, and I think this is the main point here, 40k is a much better decision than Pathfinder. It's not like the Pathfinder games were bad, not at all, quite the opposite. I love the Pathfinder games, and many people do as well. It's just that 40k has a massive audience, and with the release of 40k in the beginning of December, there's going to be a huge new influx of players who've never touched an Owlcat game before. Why? Because they love 40k, they might like RPGs, but the main thing is they love 40k, and a new game where you get to role-play a rogue trader sounds amazing to them. Remember, there's a much bigger audience for Warhammer 40k than there is for Pathfinder, globally speaking. And so despite my biases, I have to acknowledge that probably Rogue Trader is going to do a lot better financially in terms of sales than Pathfinder ever could because the audience is so much bigger. I've seen many comments over the last couple of months and it has become abundantly apparent. For example, several people saying that although they've enjoyed the Pathfinder games, most of their friends have no interest. But when Rogue Trader was announced, they suddenly did get interest and they pre-ordered the game. Then there's another camp that is less familiar with 40k, and this camp I kind of belong to, that wants to get 40k to support Owlcat. I think Owlcat is a great developer. They're one of my favorite studios out there, so it was a no-brainer to purchase 40k in order to support them. And I'm going to try the game. And I think it's going to be a fantastic game. I know lots of people are playing the beta version. I have access to it. I haven't gotten around to it. I've been very busy with real life, unfortunately. A lot of things are happening, not all of them pleasant. But at the very latest, I will be playing in December. Want to give it a go. But for me, and this is just my personal opinion, my subjective feelings on the matter, 40k by its very nature, especially in the context of Rogue Trader, is very human-centric. And the lore and how everything is built up is less my cup of tea. I much prefer a world with many gods, many religions, many different races, many different cultures, and yes, I'm aware of the space elves and the orcs. That stuff exists, but 40k is nonetheless very human-centric. So ultimately, although I could see myself absolutely enjoying the game, there's no question, the architecture of the setting itself probably will never tantalize me the same way that Pathfinder does. And obviously, that's just my subjective take. Like I said, I will be playing the game, I'm going to try it out, I'm going to see what happens. I'm just very resistant to the grimdark setting in general, but most of all I want Owlcat to succeed as a studio, ideally so they can later down the line make more Pathfinder games. And ultimately therein lies the dilemma, I think. Because if you think about it, Wrath of the Righteous has done something that to my mind no other CRPG has ever done. It represents the ultimate fulfillment of a power fantasy. Yes, in many games, many RPGs, you do play a hero that gets really powerful, but in very few of them can you actually transform into a godlike entity, as by the end of Pathfinder, whichever mythic path you take, you end up effectively being a demigod. And so that naturally raises the question, how can anyone top that? How could Owlcat top something like Wrath of the Righteous? Well, we know that Wrath of the Righteous draws upon a module. And so the real question is, can the players, us, deal with something like a diminishment of power, as it were? I don't think there's going to be another opportunity to necessarily become a demigod. And I think that's okay. You could still have a very interesting game, even though you are not becoming a mythic being or a demigod. There's another issue, of course, that going forward, Paizo is going to be working on Pathfinder 2nd Edition in terms of the rules, and so Paizo would have to adapt that to whatever they did. And maybe by the time they work on a new Pathfinder game, they will base it on a new module within the 2nd Edition framework. There are a lot of possibilities going forward for Owlcat with respect to Pathfinder, and I really hope they don't give up on it. They're open to the idea, they said, which is, thank the gods, something. And I understand both the interest and necessity at this current moment in time to focus on 40k Rogue Trader, which I'm sure is going to be a fantastic game, but I still have great hopes in the future for future Pathfinder games, new stories, new adventures, because frankly speaking, Wrath of the Righteous is one of my favorite games ever, and I would love to see more such games in the future.